This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and today we have something torn apart on the bench that I didn't know existed, but I'm really not surprised that they offered one of these. They offered everything else. This is a Heathkit Jr. child's record player, solid state, from I believe 1967. I need another record player like I need a hole in the head, but this was a bit unusual, and it was a very cheap buy it now price on eBay, so I went ahead and got it. Here's the plastic turntable platter. It's going to need a new pad before long. This one's not fully crumbling apart, but you can tell it's looking kind of ragged, so we'll replace that. The amp and cartridge work, although there's a little hum that may be capacitor related, but the drive mechanism needs to be serviced. Here's the amplifier. It uses 4 transistors and a couple of those big black capacitors that are prone to open up. The motor, one of the mounting nuts and washers is missing, but that won't be a problem. I've got enough junk here. I can come up with those pieces, and then we'll give the motor a good cleaning and lubrication as well as the rest of the drive mechanism, and it should be okay. Now, I spun this by hand, and it sounds pretty good for what it is. As you can hear, we have a little hum that goes away, mostly goes away when I turn the volume down, so that may be normal for this amp, but I will test those capacitors. Yeah, that sounds decent. Sounds pretty good for what it is. Most of these early solid-state kiddie record players really sounded like crap. Sounded way worse than the tube models did. This one here sounds very similar to what a tube model would sound like. And this wheel is all deformed and screwed up too, so that'll have to be replaced. But I should have one in my junk stash. We'll see. I was able to fix it. I just manipulated it and got the rubber back down in the groove, and it seems to be okay now. And you can see what happened here. One of the mounting nuts came loose, probably from years of use and vibration, but we can come up with those, I believe, a nut and a washer. Here's the underside of the amplifier board, and it's definitely a kit build. I'm going to go over these solder connections and kind of neaten them up a bit and check the capacitors, and then we'll put it all back together and see if we can play a record. Okay, I changed those 2 capacitors. The 2 original ones checked out of tolerance. They would have probably still worked for a little while, but they read much higher than they're supposed to, and I cleaned up the solder on the back of the board a little bit, so let's put it back together and see if it'll work. Well, let's clean the volume pot first, just for good measure. Okay, I got it all back together, and it's working pretty good. These capacitors, I probably could have left them in there, but they are way higher than they should be, and I've seen these plastic ones either short or dry up and bust open, and as cheap as they are, I just went ahead and changed them. The motor mounts could stand to be replaced. They're a little bit spongy. It's causing a little bit of wow and flutter, but I don't have any right now. I need to order some. Maybe I'll get around to replacing them one day, but this record player is more of a novelty and something for historical purposes. It's not something I'm going to use all the time. Another thing, well, it's a good way to break the needle. I think it already needs to be replaced, but they're cheap enough too. But another thing, even though this has 78, it only has a single LP needle, and they started doing that in the mid to late 60s because by that time they probably figured the only 78s that would be played would be the newer micro groove kiddie 78s. I wish they'd have kept them with the old 2-sided needle, but since this cartridge is good, I'm certainly not going to change it out to a 2-sided one. I was in a thrift store a while back and found some of these kiddie storybook records. Masters of the Universe, The Revenge of Skeletor, Smokey the Bear, Masters of the Universe, Castle Grayskull, and yeah, Walt Disney stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had all these whenever I was a kid.
This is your Masters of the Universe read-along book. Every time you hear this sound, it means it's time to turn the page in your storybook. Now, we are ready to begin. Open your book, and we will start the story of The Revenge of Skeletor. And remember, when you hear the sound, turn the page. Deep in the farthest reaches of space, in another dimension of time and reality, there exist two worlds which orbit the same sun. One of these planets, a place of wonderment and beauty, is Eternia. Eternia is protected by He-Man.
Yeah, I remember when He-Man was the big thing. Used to watch it every afternoon when I'd get home from school. That and Scooby-Doo. That was back before we had the likes of Maury Povich and judge who might judge this and judge that and who my baby daddy and all that crap. It's back when TV was a little more civilized than it is today. Yeah, it's hard to find these records that still have the storybook with them. Usually you just find the record and it's usually beat all to pieces. Usually don't find them in decent shape with the book.
This is the story of Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the chimes ring like this. Let's begin now. Brer Rabbit had a way of always doing things he had no business doing in the first place.
Yeah, that's weird. The reverb they got going on there. I think part of that's due to this needle being a little bit on the worn side, so we'll have to replace that.
This is your Masters of the Universe read-along book. Every time you hear this sound, it means it's time to turn the page in your storybook. Now, we are ready to begin our adventure. Open your book, and we will start the story of Castle Grayskull. And remember, when you hear the sound, turn the page.
With a ranger's hat and shovel and a pair of dungarees, you will find him in the forest, always sniffing at the breeze. People stop and pay attention when he tells them to beware, 'cause everybody knows that he's the fire prevention.
Take him where he wants to go. Maybe my baby's got a new lover.
And he left a stream of water behind him. He was a very funny sight to see. The neighbors...
Now that might be a 2-mil stylus that's in here. I don't know. But anyway, there you go. Hope you got something out of that. More to come later.